In the shadows of Brazil's glittering cities, where wealth and opulence contrast sharply with poverty and despair, lies a harrowing tale of systemic violence against the most vulnerable, Afro-Brazilian children. The tragic legacy of 350 years of slavery still haunts these children, who have become the silent victims of a slow genocide that began decades ago and continues unabated. The killings were not random acts of violence, but part of a truly terrifying organized effort. Death squads, often composed of off-duty police officers, were hired by local business owners to quote-unquote cleanse the streets of petty thieves and quote-unquote undesirables. In reality, these children were not criminals. They were victims of a society that had failed them at every turn. Between January 1987 and July 1988 alone, 306 children were killed by these squads in Rio de Janeiro's poorest and most violent suburbs. And from 1988 to 1991, nearly 6,000 children were murdered, according to the Federal Police of Brazil. A more recent report found that in 2022, of the more than 1,300 people killed by the police in Rio, nearly 90% were black. The situation became so dire that a Brazilian Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry was established in March 1991 to investigate these horrific crimes. The Commission's findings were nothing short of damning. Police officers, judges, and other members of the judiciary were implicated in these killings. The very institutions meant to protect these children were complicit in their deaths. The Commission's report detailed how identity cards of judicial officers were issued to suspected death squad members, and how municipal guards and private security firms were also involved. The impunity was staggering. One former police commissioner for minors was sentenced to 6 years in prison for murdering a 15-year-old boy in 1989, but never served a day behind bars, despite the authorities knowing his whereabouts. In fact, he continued to be entrusted with cases involving children, a horrifying statement to the depth of corruption in Brazil, according to an Amnesty International report. The world's attention was drawn to Brazil once again on July 23, 1993, when the Candelária Massacre occurred in Rio. 8 homeless children and youth aged between 11 and 19 were gunned down in cold blood by police from Rio's 5th Battalion. The massacre was a brutal reminder of the deadly consequences of being young, black, and poor in Brazil. The aftermath of the massacre was just as appalling as the event itself. Although 7 people stood for trial for the murders, only 3 policemen were convicted, and they were released long before completing their sentences. The ringleader, who had been sentenced to 300 years in prison, was pardoned after serving just 18 years and became a fugitive thereafter. Yvonne Bezerra, a woman who has dedicated her life to helping these 3 children, captured the cruel indifference of society with her chilling words, and I quote, "In this society, poor people and black people don't count." Her sentiment was tragically accurate, as many viewed the massacre as a necessary act of quote-unquote social cleansing, a twisted attempt to rid the streets of what they saw as human trash. The Candelária Massacre was not an isolated incident. It was a flashpoint in an ongoing war against Afro-Brazilian children, a war that continues to this day. The statistics are horrifying. In 1993, around 11,000 young people in Brazil died a violent death. Today, that number has risen to an annual figure of 28,000. This is not just a series of random acts of violence, it is a slow genocide, one that targets the most vulnerable members of society: young, black, and impoverished Brazilians. The legacy of slavery in Brazil is undeniable. Half of all African slaves brought to the Americas landed in Brazil. And when slavery was finally abolished in 1888, the newly freed Afro-Brazilians were left to fend for themselves without land, money, or education. Today, millions of their descendants live in the same dire circumstances as their ancestors, trapped in a cycle of poverty, violence, and neglect. The favela shantytowns that ring Brazil's major cities are a testament to this enduring legacy of oppression. These communities are home to millions of Afro-Brazilians who have been systematically marginalized and excluded from the nation's prosperity. The streets of these favelas are where many of the massacres take place, where death squads roam freely, and where the slow genocide continues, unchecked and unchallenged. In July 1990, in response to mounting international pressure, the Brazilian government passed the Statute of the Child and Adolescent, a legal code designed to protect the rights of children. The statute declared that no child or adolescent would be subjected to neglect, discrimination, exploitation, violence, or cruelty. Yet more than 3 decades later, the promise of this statute remains unfulfilled. The murders continue, the perpetrators go unpunished, and the cycle of violence grinds on. Brazil's Afro-Brazilian street children are more than just victims. They are the living testament to a society that has yet to reckon with its past. Their plight is a powerful reminder that the fight for justice is far from over. The slow genocide of these children is an affront to humanity, a wound that must be healed with swift and decisive action. For every life lost, there is a story, a family, a future that was brutally cut off. We must remember them, not as mere statistics, but as children who deserved so much more than the world gave them. The time for justice is long overdue. Thanks for watching, viewers. I genuinely appreciate it. Let me know what you think about the treatment of Afro-Brazilian street children and Afro-Brazilians in general by leaving your comments below. And please like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth videos about Africa and her descendants the world over. Keep watching and see you next time. Thank you.